Welcome to the Weekly Wars podcast, where two guys who talk about Star Wars way too much have decided to record it and let you listen. Be sure to check every Wednesday to get the latest episode. In Star Wars news this week, you can now watch the LEGO Star Wars Force Awakens trailer. Also, the official Star Wars website is holding a vote to determine the best Jedi. Be sure to make your way over there and cast your vote. And now to Zach and Rhett.
Welcome to Weekly Wars, your weekly dose of all things Star Wars.
Hey everybody, this is episode 2 of our Weekly Wars podcast. I am Zachary Marsh.
And I'm Rhett Christensen.
This week, we're going to be talking about moments from the Force Awakens novelization that came out just a few weeks ago. We've had the chance to read it, and there's some really cool moments in it. But before we get into that, we've been listening to our user feedback, our listener feedback, and someone suggested we talk about Luke Skywalker's super sexy Jedi beard.
Well, and it is super sexy. I mean, he's got the full Obi-Wan thing going. He's definitely learned the appropriate things from his time with the great Jedi Master. And at least we know that he can pick up on how to be the best Jedi ever by having the best beard ever.
And not having to even say a word. You just see him and you're all like, oh yeah, he's totally a Jedi Master.
Right? The beard alone conveys his wisdom. You need nothing else.
Nothing else.
Anyone who complained about him not saying anything just wasn't looking at the beard hard enough, really.
Did people complain about that?
It is a complaint.
Oh my
apparently.
Gosh.
It was one of those, I don't remember the website, but the 11 things wrong with The Force Awakens.
11 things.
Right. One of the complaints was Luke didn't say anything. And I was like, that's totally subjective. That doesn't even count.
That's going to send me into such a rage mode. I think we need to end this topic now and get to our real podcast.
Anyway.
Oh my gosh.
So, Force Awakens novelization. It is definitely a enjoyable read for anyone who is a gigantic nerd, which is us.
Yeah, which is totally us. And we should note, as we're talking about this, that when we talk about some of these scenes in reference to the movie, it's not necessarily that we're defending things that aren't covered in the movie, because we believe a movie should stand on its own.
Right, absolutely.
But as a fan, it does give you some insight into some of what's going on and gives you a little more context, especially for some of the things that some people felt was a little rushed inside the movie.
Right. There's absolutely moments in the novelization that expound on certain notes that were only inferred within the context of the film itself. So in places it's expounded, it's not saying that the movie didn't cover it well enough necessarily, because the movie covered it exactly as much as needed to be covered. And then the book, both the novelization and the book before The Awakening, just give you additional notes on top of that.
Except for one aspect we're going to talk about later, which the teen girl inside of me really wants to hit on. That was not shown in the movie.
Not shown enough, at least.
But we'll hit on that later.
All right, so let us go ahead and talk about... I think we should talk about a scene that was almost completely cut out. That is very interesting in the fact that it doesn't necessarily add to the plot at all in any way, but it does add interesting character notes to Unkar Plutt and Chewie, I think. So essentially what happens within the novelization is that Rey is having her interaction with Unkar Plutt at the point when he's offering to buy BB-8 from her.
Right. And basically everything in the side of the novelization is about twice as long as what's in the movie. Like
much more dialogue than the movie needed, for sure.
Right. Yeah. They cut it down quite a bit, and mostly for good reasons. But yeah, a lot of this is expanded here, especially this interaction with Unkar Plutt, where he wants to buy BB-8.
Right. They have more of a back and forth, a little more haggling. Rey actually brings him up and up to an amount that is unheard of. I mean,
in fact, I think it's 60 portions in the movie, and she argues him up to 100 portions.
right.
Which is not quite double, but, it's getting up there.
Right. It's a nearly 50% increase. So,
and in fact, it's so high that BB-8 is getting a little upset by it.
And she has to turn him off.
Right. Rey actually turns BB-8 off during the conversation while she's contemplating actually taking the deal.
Right. And so that's actually a character building moment for Rey, because one thing that they kind of go more in depth in with the novelization is her utter loneliness and the reliance that she has built just on herself and not anyone outside. And she gets a little more confident, and it sort of shows how she's developing her confidence when she's talking to Unkar and seeing just how high she can raise the deal to. Yeah, this is Unkar Plutt is the guy that has scalped scavengers for their parts for however long Jakku has had settlers, basically. He's just ripped everyone off on the face of that planet, and she has something he wants so badly that she makes him basically beg for it, and then
goes back on the deal.
Shuts him down hardcore.
And that actually, it does add a little bit, because in the movie, you're kind of like, oh, well, why is he so mad? And I'm pretty sure they did shoot more of the scene, because there's even that toy that they released that got cut totally from the movie. It's like a local law enforcer.
Oh, Constable Zuvio.
Yeah, Constable Zuvio.
He's a Kyuzo, by the way.
You're such a nerd.
You freaking know it. So they had more of that with Constable Zuvio protecting Rey because of how upset Unkar was.
Right.
But
she's
good.
still able to take care of herself. And so in that respect, I actually think it was a good change to cut that out, because the only thing you see of her, Jakku, fighting-wise, is in control of the situation. Like, Finn tries to pull her along, but she's like, no, you should follow me. I know where to go.
Right.
And then her, previous to that, both staff fighting. And yeah, exactly.
Fighting off the thugs.
Fighting off the thugs.
Yeah, and I think that is absolutely... And in the novelization, they do go a little more into her fighting, and I think they even showcase a little bit better just how skilled she is, because she basically does an arm bar and tosses one dude to the ground, and then beats the other guy up with her staff, and so fast he can't even do anything.
Right, and I actually wonder if that was a little longer in the film and they cut it down, because JJ was just like, well, we just need to show that she does have melee skills and she can take care of herself.
Right. When it still is enough, I think, to show hey, she's quick and she's competent. She takes down 3 guys larger than her in a matter of seconds before Finn can even get close to helping her. So it showcases that pretty well. But
this is all just set up for a scene later in the film that we don't get, but it is in the novel. We're still speculating on to whether it actually was shot.
Right.
As far as we know, it's not. We haven't seen any deleted scenes or hints of it like we have from the trailers or anything.
Yeah, if there is Simon Pegg on the Takodana set, then you might speculate, but there's not even that. So
and so that's where we go. We go to Takodana and Maz's castle later in the film. Han Solo's brought them there to meet Maz to figure out what to do with BB-8.
Right. And that's actually a portion that does get glossed over in the movie, because last you see Chewbacca, he is on the ship. He's tending to the Falcon while they go into Maz's castle. And then in the movie, Chewbacca is running out of the castle with them. So the way that it happens in the book is that Rey is... I think it's right after Finn has decided to leave. She's kind of out of sorts, and she's in the cantina. And then Unkar Plutt shows up, and he starts harassing her, essentially.
Basically, and saying, hey, you stole my ship, and you got to come back with me.
Right. He's trying to take her away because of his loss of property. And then Chewie shows up
and rips his freaking arm off.
So this is a very interesting scene just because of the obvious callbacks to A New Hope.
I want to reemphasize this before we go on to that. He rips his arm off.
Right. Well, you better not upset a Wookiee.
Exactly. Don't upset the Wookiee.
Let the Wookiee win, because otherwise he will literally rip your arm off.
And wouldn't it have been great to finally see Chewbacca actually rip someone's arm off?
I mean, they since they didn't put it in The Force Awakens, they need to put it in later, because that's a hint that's been going on for decades
forever.
now.
And maybe they think that would give him... Well, and this goes to what you're talking about. Maybe they're worried about an R rating, but like you're saying, this gives us callbacks to A New Hope.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, if they want to keep a rating that's family friendly, then just make it like a droid or something, something that's, or even blue blood. They use different colored blood to get past those ratings the time.
They do all the time.
So they could just do something creative like that. But
well, and I wonder, too, if they did shoot the scene or if it was in an early version of the script, that the reason they removed it is because it was too much of a callback to A New Hope. They were concerned maybe they felt like they were copying it too much, because that is a general complaint that is held amongst people, that it was a copy of A New Hope.
Right.
I don't maintain that theory myself anymore. My theory is adapted over time, but there are a lot of people who think that, and JJ may have been trying to avoid it.
Yeah, so that could be too much of a direct correlation. So we could see why he avoided it. And also, I mean, for the purpose of the plot, you don't really need to know why Chewie was in the castle, and you don't really need to know that Unkar Plutt followed Rey to Takodana.
That's definitely not relevant to the overall story. Chewbacca being in the castle is sort of like, how did he get there? Right. And that's one of those movie things where they cut things out and it sort of jumps. And the movie actually does that later during an ice chase scene, which we've seen still photos behind the scenes of, but didn't end up happening.
Yeah, promotional materials even that didn't make it in.
So, okay, well, let's go on to our next moment. Rey and Finn, early in their meeting together, they had just escaped Jakku together.
Still on the Millennium Falcon. After they have made their heroic escape, they both rush from the gunner seat and the pilot seat to each other, and they're talking over and all
we see
excited.
Them in the movie circling around each other, congratulating each other, and so happy, which, as you've said before, is actually a very real moment, which is something that we don't always get. Like, if you actually did something awesome like that, you'd be all like, guys, I'm so cool.
Right.
Like,
the adrenaline
would
just be off the charts.
Totally.
So it's awesome to see people reacting that way. This is, and also reminiscent of Han and Luke when they are on the Millennium Falcon in A New Hope. But it's a little more interactive, and you definitely feel like that could be you. You just escaped an Imperial pursuit or a First Order pursuit.
Same thing. They're a subset of the Empire, so
it's close enough. So they're just stoked.
But there's more. In the book, Rey and Finn pause as they gaze at each other after congratulating each other.
I think it should be noted that the notes I made included the words oogly googly eyes.
Oogly googly eyes.
So
at
googly,
each other.
So googly.
And then it gets interrupted
by BB-8.
That stupid droid.
Those droids always causing problems.
Gosh.
But on top of that, at the end of the novel,
this is my favorite.
We have a moment where everyone is essentially celebrating after having returned from the destruction of Starkiller Base. And as hugs are going around and everyone's congratulating each other, Poe and Rey hug each other.
And then stop for a moment, and she recognized his ruggedly handsome face.
So, what we have here seems to be a classic love triangle situation.
And we're hoping they explore it more in episode 8 maybe, and hopefully it's all resolved by episode 9. Well, at least I'm hoping. That's the teenage girl in me that's going, ha ha,
Right.
Yes.
Unless they do that thing with the original trilogy where it's like there could be a love triangle, but no, that was never going to happen because they were brother and sister, obviously.
Well, and it's totally possible that Rey and Poe are siblings and they don't know about it.
I don't think anyone's explored that as far as I've seen on Reddit or other disreputable sites.
No, I make up new theories every day. So.
It's a constant thing.
It's
so
always happening.
We would love to hear your thoughts on this, our dear listeners. So when discussing this, please make sure to use the hashtags Team Finn and Team Poe, and let the discussions begin.
Yeah, let us know what you think and who you want Rey to be with. We did have someone who was all like, no, I don't want a love triangle, blah, 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 that I talked to about this. And I'm all like, you're a girl. You should want the love triangle. But that's just the sexist part of me coming out.
Everyone wants a love triangle.
Everyone does.
It's just a necessity.
It's a part of life.
So the next point I want to cover is a pretty small detail on board the ship that Han and Chewie are on when they find the Falcon. And it actually takes place during the Rathtar scene. You have the Guavian Death Gang and the Kanji Clubbers both being torn apart by these Rathtars, and everyone's running every which way. And in the movie, you have this moment that reestablishes the roguishness of Han Solo as they're running away, and I think it's a Kanji Clubber comes up, and Han grabs him and chucks him towards the Rathtar, and the Rathtar just swoops him up and runs away with him. But in the book,
Chewbacca is the one who grabs the guy and throws him into the Rathtar mouth.
So it seems like this could be something that was written originally from, like, as the original script was put out, that was how it was supposed to be. But I think it seems kind of like an Abrams call to change that.
I think so. And I think it's the right call to make to have
Absolutely.
Han Solo do it in the movie, because it does give you that he's back to his rogue ways now.
Right.
He's
not above chucking someone else to the monster so that he could get away.
Yeah, if Chewbacca did it, you would have just been all like, oh, that's Chewie.
Yeah. Right.
But Han Solo doing it, you're all like, yeah, he's the man.
Right. So it does bring up the question, though, who threw first?
Right. So here's our other hashtag Chewie threw first. I did it first here.
Breaking new ground constantly.
I'm going to make a t-shirt that says that, and everyone's going to ask me about it, and I'm going to feel like a dummy, but I'm still going to do it.
Do it. Let the nerd wars begin.
Also, it goes into a little more detail in that section about how they go into Lightspeed from
Well,
the docking bay.
I actually, as a tangent, a slight tangent to that, I thought it was interesting because when you're watching the movie, the Rathtar lands on the viewing area of the Falcon just as they're about to go to Lightspeed. So they're entering hyperspace, and you kind of see the Rathtar get peeled off of the transparisteel. So it's getting peeled off of the porthole, and when I saw it the first couple of times, I was like, it looks kind of like it's being ripped apart, but they're not showing it being ripped apart, obviously. And then in the book, it actually says, yes, that Rathtar was pulled apart into fleshy pits.
And pretty much the hangar bay
is covered.
Yeah.
So it was a little more graphic. It's a little definitely excessive for a PG-13 rating. So I can understand why that wasn't necessarily included. They didn't want to those guys that got blasted back by the blowback of the Millennium Falcon would have also been covered, and that ups the the gore factor.
The factor. So yeah. So with that aside, let's go to the end of the film. This is actually one moment that I really appreciated.
It is a little too bad this one didn't this particular line didn't make it into the final cut of the film.
No. I'm talking about when the Resistance gets together. to figure out what to do about Starkiller Base.
Okay.
So this moment's very interesting. We're going to get to that in a second. Those 3 words. Stay tuned. No, but after Starkiller Base is fired and destroyed a bunch of planets, and as an aside, real quick, Starkiller Base actually creates a binary system out of the planets it destroys.
The Hosnian system.
Yeah, the Hosnian system.
That was the current seat of the Republic. It causes a small nova that turns the planet into a star. So a binary system is created.
Binary, which is really cool.
A small detail that is for science geeks, probably, more than anything.
And so is this next part. What I think is interesting is in the movie, when the Resistance gets together to figure out how they're going to deal with Starkiller Base, they pretty much just go, hey, what are we supposed to do? Well, it has to be contained somehow. And they're like, there's an oscillator. And Finn's like, yeah, I know where the oscillator is. And they're
right
like,
over here.
right. And we're going to have to go blow it up. And that's it. Like, that's it. And that's fine. And for the movie, we as viewers knew the goal, we knew what they had to do, and we understood, the consequences of not doing it because they're going to get blown up.
It's all laid out. You don't need to know anymore.
But in the book, they have no idea what the Starkiller Base is.
It's really nice for them to spend that moment saying, we have never seen this technology.
Like, they're completely bewildered, and they have the scientists in the conversation going, maybe it travels through space-time, and that's how it's able to go through the galaxy so fast and hit planets.
Right, and it's not, their hypothesis is that it's even more than hyperspace, because hyperspace is an alternate dimension that allows faster travel through the space-time continuum. But they actually use the term sub-hyperspace because it is even faster than hyperspace travel.
Which makes a certain amount of sense because it's traveling through red hyperspace as opposed to the normal blue we see, and maybe that's not exactly why, but that could be a part of it.
Yeah, and that's a good visual distinction as well.
But yeah, the scientists don't know. They're just like, what?
Yeah, and
what happened?
They even have Finn. He says, "Well, I overheard these guys talking about it." So the information they're working off is basically fourth hand at that point,
right?
Because Finn's not that type of scientist.
Or well, and even the oscillator thing, they don't even know. They're all like, I guess if they were containing this kind of energy, which we don't know how they would do, there would have to be an oscillator, maybe, but they don't know.
Well, and the other interesting point is the dark energy that they bring up. Basically, they try to explain that it's harnessing the power of the sun, but with the power of the sun is a reflection of that power known as dark energy. So it's pulling in these two different types of powers, and that dark energy is what allows the sub-hyperspace movement of
theoretically, though. Like I said, they're saying we're guessing this is what's happening, and they also said that they think the gravity of the planet is also helping contain that.
Right.
Energy.
It was a high gravity planet. So the high gravity helps contain it, and then they postulate that an oscillator would also be needed. But then they go on to say, even if we destroy the oscillator, we don't know if it'll disable the weapon.
which adds a little bit of tension. And on top of that, they say, well, we only have a few minutes because
they're getting primed to fire it again.
Well, that and the fleet, the First Order fleet could show up at any time.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so they have a limited time span before the fleet of the First Order shows up and just wipes them out.
Right. So they have these narrowest of windows in which to evade the fleet, strike at it before it shoots at the rebel base, and all while not even knowing whether destroying the oscillator will in fact disable the weapon.
Right.
So that's actually one of the moments I really like with Leia, is that she says, okay, we don't know, but we got to do something, because either way we're going
to blow up. Right. And which is an awesome Leia moment where she's just all like, we can talk about the science later. We have to do something now.
Right. It's totally within her character. It's like in Empire Strikes Back, when she's willing to stay behind to help make sure all the ships escape Hoth, despite everything else. She knows that it's not the smartest idea, but she's got to do everything she can to complete the mission.
Yep, which is awesome.
And just as an interesting thought from my side of the things, they talk about the First Order developing the type of technology that would be necessary to contain this dark energy, which is something that's never been done before. And I really hope that's something that they explore in the future, because there seems like there could be quite a lot of potential there where you could kind of advance the technology of the Star Wars universe, whether it's through things like perhaps dark energy rifles, spaceships that can travel through sub-hyperspace, so faster than light and faster than light.
Well, and this might go into some theories people have that Episode 8 will have time travel. I don't think so, and I don't want it to have time travel, but
it is at least some sort of possibility at this point. And I think my favorite theory about this is a weapon that has shown up in the Clone Wars, but not really anywhere else, especially not anything that's canon nowadays. And that weapon is known as the Darksaber. And it's been sort of an enigma. All they know about the Darksaber is that it's been around a long, long time. And it's different from normal lightsabers because it is a black blade. It sounds different. It operates different to a certain extent. And it interacts with lightsabers the same. So I'm wondering if this is their way of either trying to explain that technology or to introduce something like a Darksaber into the movies.
Well, this is kind of an aside, and spoiler alert if you are not caught up on the current season of Rebels. Do we know what Ahsoka's lightsaber is? Is it a standard lightsaber with a unique crystal? Or is it some variant dark saber? It doesn't have a dark core, but it does kind of shine like it. So
right. I mean, they did have silver lightsabers in video games and things like that, but they've never had it as part of official canon.
And Rebels is canon, so that's interesting.
Which hopefully we do find out more in Rebels.
All right, let's move on to our last point here. Our one of our favorite moments from the Force Awakens novelization. We are in the lightsaber fight. Kylo Ren and Finn have an interaction, or a fight, not just an interaction, but they have a fight. An exchange. But the reason I say interaction or exchange is because actually Kylo Ren is sort of fooling with Finn at first. He's just sort of entertaining the idea and sort of mocking him even for trying to come to the defense of Rey. At least that's the impression I got reading it. But then as soon as he gets nicked, he's like, no, we're done. And then he takes Finn out immediately.
Yeah, and that is just so amazing because, he's got a little bit of hubris. He's definitely got some of that pride of the Skywalker lineage. And he's just, letting Finn do his thing. And then he gets hit and he's like, okay, no. And with one fell stroke and actually a slight deviation between novel and movie again, in the novel, he cuts him down the front. So he basically splits him down the chest rather than the back. But I think visually the back is a grievous injury without looking like he just got killed
and I think it smoothed out the choreography too. It let Kylo Ren smoothly, move through and then slice him from behind.
Right.
But after that, Rey, just as in the movie, force pulls the lightsaber past Kylo Ren.
As he's reaching out for it, expecting it to come to him, it whizzes past into the hands of Rey.
And she grabs it and ignites it. And then Kylo Ren says, "It is you."
With much emphasis.
Maybe I added the emphasis in my head. However, that's very interesting.
Yes, and it's worth mentioning, too, that a few times in the novel before then, specifically when Ren is talking to Supreme Leader Snoke, he says something to the effect of, she is no one. She's just a scavenger from Jakku. So at at that point in the novel, it's kind of like, oh, perhaps she is just no one. But then it completely comes around the other way. And I think that is completely indicative of something.
Well, and watching the movie, there's a couple moments that we don't see and some hints, like when she introduces herself to BB-8. And
it's classified.
It's classified, right? And she's saying it sarcastically, but, as audience members are like, oh, yeah, sure, there's probably a secret, though.
Right.
And then when Maz asks Han about her...
They cut away immediately.
Now, the only reason I bring that up is because, of course, everyone in the universe is speculating on who she is.
Right.
What I think is interesting about this is it does mean there is relevance to who she is. And so...
Right.
Assuming they don't change everything drastically from their initial plan, I think who she is or her family background will be important. And there's some people who don't want it to be mentioned, or they theorize it's not important. And there's even a moment from Maz where she says, don't worry about what's behind you, worry about what's ahead of you. But this line seems to imply that there is significance to her or her family or both.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely something there, and I think that that dichotomy between she is no one earlier in the book and then it is you at the end is, like I said, extremely indicative. It is not there by accident. It's definitely meant to be there, and you're meant to draw something from that. What it is, we don't know. And I think we'll do a separate podcast just for Rey theories.
Oh, yeah. We have some great Rey theories.
Our own, and also dissecting those that are found online.
Other theories.
Yeah, there are plenty out there, and a lot of them are super fun to read. I think we'll have a good time with that when it comes.
And that's not our next episode, but it is in the pipeline. That should be a couple episodes down. We're going to hit that up. So that's our podcast this week. We're thankful that you guys were here to join us for moments from the Force Awakens novelization. Be sure to share with your friends, let them know about the Facebook page. We'll plan to see you next week.
And may the Force be ever in your favor.